Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath, Shri Radhe. Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nittai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gora Hari Bol. Nittai Go Premanandi. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtotra Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Abhay Charana Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtotra Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर वसादि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की श्री वृंदावन धाम की गंगा माई की जमुना माई की Bhakti Devi ki, Shri Guru Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki, Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Book Distribution ki, Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Prasadam Distribution ki, Nitai Gop Premanande. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories, Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 10, titled Divisions of the Creation, and verse number 12. We start with reciting the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 3, Chapter 10, verse number 12. Vishvam Vai Brahma Tanmatra Samstitam Vishnu Mayaya Ishvarena Parichinam Kalena Vyaktamurtinaha Vishvam Vai Brahma Tanmatram Samstitam Vishnu Mayaya Ishvarena Parichinam Kalena Vyaktamurtina Vishvam Vai Brahma Tanmatram Samstitam Vishnu Mayaya Ishvarena Parichinam Kalena Vyaktamurtina. Vishvam, the material phenomenon. Vai, certainly. Brahma, the supreme. Tan tat matram, the same as. Samstitam, situated. Vishnu Mayaya, by the energy of Vishnu. Ishvarena, by the personality of Godhead. Parichinam, separated. Kalena, by the eternal time. Avyakta, unmanifested. Murtina, by such a feature. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Abhay Chandra Ravinda Bhakti Vedanta Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. This cosmic manifestation is separated from the Supreme Lord as material energy by means of Kala, which is the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Lord. It is situated as the objective manifestation of the Lord under the influence of the same material energy of Vishnu. As stated previously by Narada before Vyasadeva, Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, verse 20, Idam hi vishwam bhagavan nivetara. This unmanifested world is the self-same personality of Godhead. But it appears to be something else beyond or besides the Lord. It appears so because of its being separated from the Lord by means of kala. It is something like the tape-recorded voice of a person who is now separated from the voice. As the tape recorder is situated on the tape, so the whole cosmic manifestation is situated on the material energy and appears separate by means of kala. The material manifestation is therefore the objective manifestation of Supreme Lord and exhibits his impersonal feature so much adored by impersonalist philosophers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishubhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatirubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So I'll read the verse again. Canto 3, chapter 10, verse number 12. This cosmic manifestation is separated from the Supreme Lord as material energy by means of kala, which is the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Lord. It is situated as the objective manifestation of the Lord under the influence of the same material energy of Vishnu. So, in this chapter is titled Divisions of the Creation. And we see first Vidura asking Maitreya, and he asks this question about, he asks this question in text number 10. O my Lord, O greatly learned sage, kindly describe eternal time, which is another form of the Supreme Lord, the wonderful actor. What are the symptoms of that eternal time? Please describe them to us in detail. And in the following verse, text 11, Maitreya said, eternal time is the primeval source of the interactions of the three modes of material nature. It is unchangeable and limitless, and it works as the instrument of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his pastimes in the material creation. And for completeness, I'll read again, text 12. This cosmic manifestation is separated from the Supreme Lord as material energy by means of kala, which is the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Lord. It is situated as the objective manifestation of the Lord under the influence of the same material energy of Vishnu. So, when we put them all together, time is the impersonal feature of the Lord. What does it mean to be the impersonal feature of the Lord? Have you met someone named Mr. Time? So, time is the impersonal feature of the Lord. It's subtle. It's something we can't see with our eyes, but we understand it through its effects. So, just a Bhagavad Gita trivia here. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada states there are 5 main subject matters of the Gita. What are they? Ishvara, Prakriti, Kala, Karma, and Jiva. So out of those 5 subject matters, 4 of them have been explained to quite detail in the Bhagavad Gita. You find Ishvara, obviously the main subject matters. You find the gunas. You understand about karma, the jiva, which is us. But kala, you don't get to see much. Don't get to hear much of it. And that's explained further in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which we have in front of us. So, where is the reference that Krishna makes to, with regards to kala or time in the Bhagavad Gita? In the 11th chapter. Time I am, the great destroyer of the worlds. And he tells Arjuna, except for you Pandavas, everyone else will be destroyed. So, and there's another mention of time. Where is time else being mentioned? Chapter 4 and verse number 2, where he says, Evam Parampara Pratam, Evam Rajasya Vidu. This great transcendental science was understood in the disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood in that way, but by the influence of time, it seems to have lost. So, it needs to be restored back again. So, in just undertaking those 2 verses in context from the Gita, we understand that time in this world, acts as a destructive feature. And what's the lesson that we learn from it is that we understand Krishna's supremacy in this material world, because time controls anything and everything and everyone. And if I just look at my life, in whatever life that I lived so far, time has taken away so many things that most has given. Earlier I had the appetite to eat 7 chapatis. Now time has minimized, time has really deteriorated to the extent where, I'm full with 2 chapatis. Or even in other sense, time not only destroys things on a physical level, but more on a subtle level, even relationships, for that matter. Some of my friends or some of my relatives or we may have so many attachments, and over time you see that, time takes a different turn. We may be separated on 2 different planets, 2 different continents, and because of the influence of time, where we're at today, obviously we quote the example of time zone differences, but time in general has the ability, or it's acting in a feature of deterioration. So, what's happening here is that there is this aspect of Krishna's supremacy that's being understood, that because we like to be in control as minute jivas, we have free will, and that free will for us, we express our willingness to control everything around us. But we may control something to some extent, but we won't be able to control it beyond a certain phase in time. So Krishna is trying to tell us here that it's really this whole cosmos trying to remind us that who is in control. That is Krishna. And then the one level is we understand Krishna's supremacy in this world, and then the other level that we understand is that there is this common notion, especially in the major religions of this world. Why does evil exist? If God is all good, why does evil exist? It's a fundamental question that plagues a lot of philosophies, that there's no answer to it. So here we understand it's Krishna himself acting through time. That through the agency of time, we get the seeds of our karma. So through our free will, we act in a certain way, and we accrue a particular karma that for which this, the seed is sown, and then the result awaits us in the near future. So through the agency of time, we suffer the actions of our past. We take on the reaction of our past actions. So through the agency of time, Krishna is actually giving us our karma. So again, the Gita or the Vedic literature point us in this direction, that through the agency of time, things, or whatever that we consider to be eternal in this world, come to an end, and also we get the results of our karma. So time is acting through these, at these multiple levels. And eventually, those that don't even believe in God, those that don't even believe in a higher power, they have to submit to death. Srila Prabhupada would always, chide at these philosophers who would come up with all these theories. They would speculate, go on speculating, and Krishna said, ultimately death will just come and take it all away. So where are these philosophers today? Where are they now? They've been taken away by death. I remember once I was speaking to an acquaintance, like a good family friend of ours, and his son was studying medicine. And he said that my son is doing some research, and as a part of his degree, that this research will somehow develop some sort of means by which doctors or medical science will be detect at a very early stage, in the first year or so of the child, what diseases or what illnesses will this child have to go through in the future, and they'll be able to circumvent that. And he said that's the advancement that science will provide. However, based on the Gita, I asked the same person that, but will it be able to overcome death? And he said, no. Then what's the point? If you're not able to overcome death, then what's the point? Because we are eternal and we want to live eternally, but this material energy is such that it'll always this material energy will have the last laugh. We'll always be subservient to it. So, again, like I said, in this topic of time, it's been described in so many different verses in the Bhagavatam. You see, a few months ago, just a couple of months ago, Devamrita Swami was speaking to a group, an outreach audience, and the topic was Bhakti now or later, time on my side. Is time on my side, with a question mark. And he gave various examples from the life of Prahlad Maharaj, and one statement that he made that really stood out for most of the audience there was like, if you don't make the best use of time, that is to be engaged in devotional service, then our existence will just be as insignificant as a foam in the ocean. We'll just disperse. So everywhere we see this being discussed in great detail. And for myself, at least, this section of the Bhagavatam, we are slowly approaching towards the Sankhya philosophy. So it's taking us in that direction. So as we understand from the Gita, obviously it's saying time is the impersonal feature of the Lord, but also points to time as being as the inexplicable wish of the Lord. But again, like in this instance, we are slowly inching towards the Sankhya philosophy. The next chapter, so in this verse and the preceding verse that we discussed, time is described in more of a generic terminology. However, in the next chapter, which is the chapter titled Calculation of Time from the Atom, it will be described in further detail in more scientific terms, and something that can be explored in further detail in the next chapter. But for here, we understand that time is the impersonal representation of the Lord. Now, just to highlight this, there were some sections in the Bhagavatam that I found quite interesting. Obviously, like I said, it carries the theme of time as being the inexplicable wish of the Lord. Is that in I'll quote 3 conversations here, and in these 3 conversations we'll see how at times it's so mysterious to even understand, for us to even, if we were to understand how time works, obviously we won't be able to because we are not Krishna, but to hear from these great personalities in the Bhagavatam, it's reassuring, but at the same time, it gives us greater appreciation for the Supreme Lord and how His energies work. So the first instance is Bhishma speaking to Yudhishthira in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, chapter 9. And he's lying on his deathbed there. He's just awaiting these last 5 days that we celebrate, that we observe is Bhishma Panchaka. So that was but fitting for me to quote Bhishma Dev. So Bhishma Dev is lying there on his deathbed of arrows, and Krishna brings the Pandavas there because Yudhishthira is feeling quite remorseful of what's actually happened. So Krishna brings Yudhishthira to Bhishma for him to, for him to get the last, that piece of wisdom that, will be imparted by Bhishma. And Bhishma there is looking at the brothers and he's saying, how unjust is it that for all you brothers to go through what you all went through. Yudhishthira, you're the son of religion personified. Bhima and Arjuna, you are, the two greatest warriors. Queen Kunti, you had to go through all of these difficulties in your life. And most importantly, he said, all this was happening with Krishna by your side. So how can you actually even understand, trying to comprehend what's happening here? And he replies, he concludes by saying, how wonderful is the influence of the inevitable time. It is irreversible. So, even in the presence or under the domain of the personality, Yudhishthira, who is the son of Dharma, religion personified, and most importantly, having the Lord Himself amidst you, you all had to go through this. All I can say is that this is the desire of the Lord. So, a lot of times we think, when we come to Shri Radha Gopinath, when we're having some challenges, we pray to Radha Gopinath, we ask Radha Gopinath, please. Actually, I'll just go back a second. In the Bhagavatam, I was listening to a talk by Radha Vinod Prabhu, and he was saying, the Bhagavatam brings to our attention on how to overcome fear of failure. Each one of us in this world is overcome by some sort of fear. For example, we may have, we insure our car via car insurance. We insure our health, so that we'll have adequate insurance just for us to, in the event of an emergency. For some, you insure yourself against death by, getting some sort of life insurance. So similarly, there's always this fear, and through certain tangible means we can, get some tangible protection. However, there's one kind of fear for which there's no such, tangible protection that we can see through or feel with our senses. That is the fear of failure. And Bhagavatam is speaking on this fear of failure through various pastimes. Our failure can happen due to our desire, the story of Ajamil. Fear can happen take place due to transgression. You see the story of Durvasa Muni. Fear due to human weaknesses. Bharat Maharaj. Not Bharat Maharaj is the fear due to desire, but then you also see a fall down happening due to human weakness, where the pastime of Mohini Murti takes place. And there's another fall down that is due to time. Because time generally, there's deterioration that happens. So, just heading on to the next pastime is the pastime of Bali Maharaj in the 8th canto. So it is described when Bali Maharaj offered, when he makes a commitment to honor the words of Vamanadev. Vamanadev, with his 2 steps of land, conquers the middle and lower and higher planets, and just see the cheekiness of Vamandev. Even though Bali Maharaj has surrendered everything, Vamandev accuses Bali Maharaj that you're a liar. You promised me 3 steps of the land, now where's my 3rd step? And when the associates of Bali Maharaj hear this, all the Daityas, they just are enraged, and then they approach Bali Maharaj, they approach Vamandev, to attack him. And then all the associates of Bali Maharaj there, all the demigods, they basically come, and Bali Maharaj, kill them. And at that very moment, Bali Maharaj stops his associates. He's like, stop, stop it, don't proceed further. And he says a very interesting point, even though, again, who is Bali Maharaj? He's the king of the Daityas. He's saying, time was previously on our side. Now we need to understand time is not on our side. Because time was on our side previously, the same people who are defeating you today were the same that you had defeated in the past. And that time is what philosophers consider today, what we commonly quote in the world today, is providence. So, providence is not in our hand, and it was previously with us, and now it's not in our hands. So don't go for it, because we need to and he says this providence is the representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as is described here in this purport. The last conversation that I would like to get to is that the conversation that happens between, again in the 8th canto, between the Lord and the, any guess? Then the Devatas. This is again much earlier than the Bali Maharaj pastime. It's happening when there's the Samudra Manthan Lila, the churning of the milk ocean. Obviously the demigods are defeated, and they've tried, they try different means to get, their share. However, when they go up to the Lord, and the Lord tells them a very important, they're going up to the Lord, and the Lord tells them, previously, because you're not favored by time and the Brahmanas, you need to make truce with the demons. Just imagine, here Krishna says, in Bhagavad Gita, time I am, and he's saying the demigod's time is not on your side. That means he's telling him, I am not on your, what is he saying here? Time is not on, I'm not on your side. And in that purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, there are 2 things, Kalyena and Kavyena. Kalyena means favored by time, and Kavyena means favored by the Brahmanas, favored by the spiritual master, Shukracharya. So the Lord tells the Devatas that because the Daityas are being favored by time, by providence, and they're being favored by Shukracharya, the spiritual master, you need to now somehow come up with a strategy to make truce with them. So this was quite an interesting point that was being made, and as I was reflecting on it, a lot of times in our Krishna consciousness, in our services, in our, in the community of devotees, sometimes when we have to deal with outside authorities, for so many other things. In one lecture, I can't remember whether it was Srila Prabhupada or some other devotee, said that for a higher purpose, it may be required that we have to turn our enemies into allies. For a higher purpose, we may have to cooperate, just to, obviously in our context here, to please Sri Sri Radha Gopinath Srila Prabhupada. They may be, for example, if as a practicing, as an aspiring sadhaka, I may be overcome by my own conditioning, and that conditioning may prevent me, at least my mind may tell me not to work with this one particular devotee. But for a higher purpose, I will have to somehow or the other cooperate with this devotee, or somehow or the other find some means by which we can have some sort of a working relationship. So I found that to be quite helpful, at least for myself. Time and time again I go back to meditate on that topic, that how, and you see that, for example, when we have to do organize events like Rath Yatras and such, we're dealing with people who are practically some of them have no concept of God consciousness, but we have to work with them to please the Lord. We have to do so many, we have to in one sense, be a beggar there, like, please, you're the greatest, please give us permission to organize the festivals, and that can be, quite humbling. So, time humbles us, and like I said, we won't, at least I can speak for myself, in my own material conditioned state, it's very hard for me to understand at times. Time can only be seen, the effect of time, or I can only be grateful to things when I look back, obviously. But the pure sages, they see this, when they always accept everything as Krishna's manifestation. So that, obviously, like I said, on the theme of time deteriorates and time humbles us, and time acts in a certain way that it's reminding us that not to be glued to this material energy, material world, expand ourselves, we need to somehow or the other make a plan to get out of this material world for us to be constantly engaged in the loving service of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath in the eternal, in the spiritual realm. So, coming back to this verse, which I'll end some discussion here that's being made in terms of how this energy, the time, it seems to be separate from the Lord. As I'll read the purport, as the tape recording is situated on the tape, so the whole cosmic manifestation is situated on the material energy and appears separate by means of kala. So kala is, obviously the energy of the Supreme Lord, but it appears separate. And I was hearing a talk by Ramapada Swami, and he was making a very interesting point there, that even though it's non-different, it appears different. How? He was giving an example how an ambassador of a country, when an ambassador of a country visits another country, even though the ambassador is a person, but he's representing the country. So, if, for example, the ambassador of India were to come to, Australia, when the Prime Minister of Australia or whichever official is dealing with that ambassador, he's actually dealing with that country. So if he misbehaves with that, or whatever that's being exchanged, if you're offering a gift to that ambassador, then it's a gift that the ambassador takes, is actually offered to the country. So even though it appears different, it's actually non-different. Earlier in this chapter, actually in this canto, and also in the second canto, we see that how what Vidura is very interested in seeing is knowing, in knowing that, O Lord, O greatly learned sage, kindly describe eternal time, which is the other form Supreme Lord. So we understand how does time act in terms of, it destroys, but he's here interested in how does time act when it comes to creation and maintenance. That's the question that he's being asking here. So as we understand, Mahavishnu is glazing, is basically just situated far away from the material energy, and the material energy is lying dormant, the form of pradhana. Mahavishnu just glances at the material energy, and in his glance there are two things that are injected. One is the jivas, and then the other one is time. Right? And time brings about activity in this world. For example, for me to walk from here to there, that's across time. So, time is acting upon Prakriti, and there are two very important words that are being used here in this verse here. One is Vishwam, the material phenomenon, and there's a word here called Tat Matram, the same as. Where is Tan Matram being used previously? Any? In the creation, in the second canto, we hear the discussion of Tan Matram. So, obviously we see time, the glance of, the glance of Mahavishnu on this primordial matter, which is pradhana, and the first element that gets, the first thing that gets created in this whole material cosmos is false ego. False ego, when it interacts with the pradhana, which is basically the modes undifferentiated, when it interacts with the mode of goodness, it separates out the mind. When false ego interacts with the mode of passion, it separates out the material intelligence. And when false ego interacts with the mode of ignorance, it separates out the tanmatras. So again, like I said, this has been described in Canto 2, and as we are approaching the rest of Canto 3, especially inching towards Lord Kapila Dev's discussion on Sankhya Yoga, this will be expounded in further detail. But interestingly, I was reading Brihat Bhagavatamrita, and there it was these elements were very graphically explained. So I just thought of sharing that with you all, and that's to a Brahmana there on what he had actually seen while he was traveling through the universe. So he was describing when a jiva is traveling out of this universe, as we understand this universe, sorry, we don't have the painting here, the universe that we have, this universe is made up of 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. And beyond this universe, as we are going out of this universe, each layer of this universe, ranging from gross all the way to subtle as we go out, each layer is 10 times more thicker than the previous layer. So as the jiva passes through these elements in its causal form, obviously, that's the cause of all causes is Krishna, Sarva Karanam Krishna, but as he or she is going past to these elements, if he does Gopakumar, when he approached, the abode of, the presiding deity along with Bhumi, he was offered. Now, as a lot of us, it's described that in the Brihad Bhagavatam that each of these elements, for example, we are conditioned to enjoying our senses. Our senses are accustomed to enjoying these gross forms of enjoyment. But as we go and higher, these material enjoyments are further more refined, and they're of a higher pleasure. Again, we can't really conceive of it, but that's what, as we understand from the Bhagavatam. So after going through the covering of earth, the next is water and fire, air, ether. And obviously now as you're going higher and higher, you're coming closer to the spiritual existence. So in the layer of, earthly coverings, the Lord is worshipped as in the form of a boar. On the higher, once you go one notch higher, that's the layer of water. Over there, because it's more closely, it's higher in the hierarchy to in terms of its proximity to the spiritual world, the Lord is more fully present in the form of Matsya. And as he peaced further, Gopakumar came to the covering of this universe, which is the primordial substance, Pradhana. And in fact, if you read Canto 10, or if you read Krishna book, in chapter 89, when Arjuna is, going along with Krishna to retrieve the sons of the Brahmana, it's described that, the density, as soon as, he could, it's described that this primordial substance is blue. It's actually blue. And it's so dense that you can feel it as mud. And you can read Canto 10, chapter 89, where Arjuna describes that he could feel the density to be as dense as mountain, just after passing through the substance, and he could just perceive just complete darkness. But again, it's the primordial substance, so it's very relishable. It's something that one can really the enjoyment, like I said, as we go from gross to subtle, gets further defined, and it's more and more pleasing. Finally, as he pierces through, Gopakumar pierces through this covering, he comes to the, and in that, just to take back, just in this primordial substance, it's Prakriti, that's in its primordial state. She is worshipping, any guesses? Moini Murti. She's worshipping the form of Moini Murti there, and it is said because Maya is so attractive, Moini Murti is even further more attractive. So, going past the primordial substance, finally, the edge of this universe, or that one that separates us, is the Pradhana. The, you can say, the material energy that is just one, just right before it's being glanced by the Lord. And in that Pradhana, obviously, when we speak of nature, modes of nature, what do modes of nature offer us? Variety. The variety to enjoy this world. So, for example, if I want to, someone may think of enjoyment as being just, going out and taking a stroll in the park. For some, enjoyment may just be going out to the club, or, So, this Mother Nature offers various forms of enjoyment. So, as Gopakumar stands there, he's seeing, even though he's offered by Prakriti to spend a few days there, but he decides to move on. But there he's seeing all these varieties of enjoyment there, and it's quite pleasing. And I'll read this here, what he actually says, what he sees there, when he just enters the abode of the Pradhana. That place was delightful and self-luminous, splendid with the most excellent wonders. Enjoying it were multitudes of living entities, their bodies made of primordial matter. Pradhana is the most subtle material energy, from which all other subtle and gross manifestations evolve. The beings Gopakumar saw had bodies of Pradhana, transcendental to the limited names and forms of manifest creation. Pradhana hides the spiritual reality from conditioned souls, but still she is described here as self-luminous, Vilas Sat Swayam, because when the conditioned souls are enlightened by transcendental knowledge, her darkness dissolves into spiritual effulgence. So, I'd never known that there are living entities staying in Pradhana and how their bodies are self-luminous and effulgent, but we understand that everything is actually a person. In this entire creation, everything is a person. Even the Brahma Jyoti is actually made up of jivas, jiva particles. So, but again, how beautifully Krishna's energy works, that it makes us think that there's no creator. If for someone who doesn't want to believe in the hand of the creator, Krishna puts them in such an, puts them into this illusory energy by which they live their lives in such illusion. But however, for us, we've been given this wonderful opportunity to associate with Srila Prabhupada's books, to associate with devotees, and to really transcend this material creation to which we don't belong eternally. So I'll end here. If there's any question or comment? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Yes. The primordial substance, basically it's the... Yes. Because prior to Mahatattva was Pradhana, right? Yeah, so Mahatattva, and it's basically described as... In the Brihad Bhagavatam, you'll see when Gopakumar is traveling through... He'll come, to these 5 layers, and he'll come to the primordial... It doesn't describe it to be Pradhan, because Pradhan is what I just read, but it's actually it is said the modes of nature in its, it's the modes of nature in a form, what he sees is the personality. He goes to this darkness, obviously after these 5 layers he goes to this darkness which is described in the 10th canto, and then obviously once he passes through that, he sees Prakriti, who is actually worshipping a Lord. So, and then he comes to this, the last bit, which is Pradhana, which again is the last step before one goes to. Yeah. Yes. So, like I said, I didn't get to it, but Matsya is being worshipped for water. Fire is Surya Narayan, and yes. Yep. It's described, but we didn't get to. Thank you, Prabhu. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, the Go Premanandi. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.